Flight attendant mocked a black boy for having no father, went silent. When a four-star general walked in, the cabin was filled with the low hum of engines and the restless shuffle of passengers when the flight attendant's sharp voice sliced through the air like a blade. Every head turned. A young black boy sat frozen in his seat, gripping his tray table with trembling fingers as the words hit him like thunder. Laughter rippled awkwardly through a few rows. Others gasped. The boy's eyes searched the cabin for anyone to save him from the humiliation. And just when the tension felt unbearable, the cockpit door behind her opened with a quiet hiss. The flight attendant had no idea that in the next few seconds, her entire world was about to collapse into silence. His name was Marcus, and he was only 10 years old. Marcus had boarded the plane clutching a worn backpack and a folded boarding pass that had been checked 3 times by 3 different employees. It was his first flight ever. His mother had hugged him tightly at the gate, whispering, "Be brave, baby. Your uncle will meet you when you land." She had tried to sound cheerful, but Marcus could feel her worry through her arms. He took his seat near the window, eyes wide with wonder as clouds drifted past the glass. The plane smelled like plastic and coffee. He buckled his seatbelt just like the safety video showed and folded his hands neatly in his lap. He wanted to be perfect, because being perfect meant no one would notice him. The flight attendant, a woman with tightly pinned hair and a practiced smile, stopped at his row during boarding. "Where's your parent?" she asked, scanning the aisle. "My mom had to go back to work," Marcus said softly. "I'm meeting my uncle." She frowned. "You're flying alone?" "Yes, ma'am." Her eyes lingered on his shoes, scuffed and too big. Then on his backpack, patched with duct tape. "Huh," she muttered. "Figures." Marcus didn't understand what she meant, but his stomach tightened as the plane leveled off and the seatbelt sign chimed off. Marcus reached into his backpack and pulled out a small notebook. Inside were drawings of airplanes and superheroes. One page had a stick figure in a military uniform with stars on the shoulders. Under it, he had written, "My dad." He traced the picture with his finger. Hadn't seen his father in 3 years. Not because he didn't want to, because his father was stationed overseas. Marcus had learned to answer questions with silence. At school, kids asked, "Where's your dad?" Teachers assumed things. Neighbors whispered things his mother pretended not to hear. So when the flight attendant came back down the aisle with drinks, Marcus tried to be invisible, but invisibility failed him. "You can't leave your bag there," she snapped when she saw his backpack on the empty seat beside him. "I'm sorry," Marcus said quickly. Lifting it to his lap. She leaned closer, lowering her voice but not enough. "Where is your father? Shouldn't a boy your age have a man watching him?" Marcus swallowed. "He's in the army." She smirked. "Sure he is." A man 2 rows back shifted uncomfortably. A woman across the aisle stared at the floor. The attendant crossed her arms. "Kids without fathers usually get into trouble. I don't want problems on my flight." The word "father" echoed in Marcus's ears like a siren. "Not trouble," he whispered. She laughed. Once, loud, sharp, "We'll see." Marcus felt heat rise to his face. His throat burned. He wanted to disappear into the seat. A young man beside him spoke up. "That's not appropriate." The flight attendant turned. "Excuse me?" "He's a kid." She straightened. "Mind your business." Then she looked back at Marcus and said the words that would freeze the entire cabin. "So what happened? Did your dad just walk out on you?" The plane went silent. Marcus stared at his notebook. His hand shook. "He didn't walk out," he said. "He's protecting people." She scoffed. "Right, another excuse." Something inside Marcus broke. Tears slid down his cheeks without sound. In the aisle behind her, a tall man in a dark military uniform had just stepped out from the cockpit. 4 silver stars gleamed on his shoulders. The flight attendant didn't see him yet, but everyone else did. Whispers spread like electricity. A passenger murmured, "That's a general." Another gasped, "4 stars." The man's face was calm, but his eyes were not. He walked forward slowly. Each step felt like a drumbeat. The flight attendant continued, unaware. "Kids like you need discipline. That's what happens when there's no father." A shadow fell over her. She turned and froze. The general stood directly behind her. His voice was low, controlled. "What did you just say to my son?" The cabin exploded into silence. Marcus looked up. His heart stopped. "Dad?" he whispered. The flight attendant's mouth opened. No sound came out. The general knelt beside Marcus's seat. "Are you okay?" Marcus nodded. "Shakily. Then the man stood and faced her. "You mocked him for not having a father," he said, "while I was flying this plane." Her face drained of color. I didn't know." "No," he interrupted. "You didn't care." Every passenger watched. "I have served this country for 30 years, he continued. "I have buried soldiers. I have carried children out of disaster zones. And I have raised my son to be brave." He gestured to Marcus, "And you humiliated him." The flight attendant's hands trembled. "I apologize," she said weakly. The general didn't raise his voice. "That made it worse. You will apologize to him." She turned to Marcus. "I'm sorry." Marcus didn't speak. The general addressed the cabin. "My son is flying alone today because his mother and I are both on duty. That does not make him weak. It makes him strong." A man clapped. Then another. Soon the cabin filled with applause. Marcus felt something new in his chest. Not fear. Pride. The general sat beside him and put an arm around his shoulders. "You did nothing wrong," he said softly. The flight attendant stood frozen, her authority gone, and the rest of the flight would never be the same. But what no one knew yet was that this moment would change more than just one flight. The applause slowly faded, but the weight of what had just happened remained suspended in the air like a storm cloud that refused to move on. Marcus sat stiffly in his seat, his small shoulders still trembling. His father's arm rested firmly around him, solid and warm, like an anchor pulling him back from the edge of something dark. Passengers kept glancing at them, some with admiration, some with shame, some with quiet relief that justice had arrived before the situation had gone too far. The flight attendant stepped backward, her face pale, eyes darting as if she were searching for a place to hide. She muttered something into her headset and hurried toward the front of the cabin. Marcus whispered, "Dad, I didn't want to cause trouble." The general lowered his voice. "You didn't. Trouble found you. And I walked into it." Marcus stared at the stars on his father's uniform. 4 of them. He had drawn them so many times in his notebook, but seeing them here, inches from his face, felt unreal. "You really fly the plane?" Marcus asked. His father smiled faintly. "Not this one. But I command the ones that protect it." A woman across the aisle leaned over. "Sir, thank you," she said quietly. "My son is about his age. No one deserves that." The general nodded. "Thank you for speaking up by being here." Minutes passed in a strange silence. The hum of the engine seemed louder now, as if the plane itself was holding its breath. Then a man in a gray jacket stood from his seat. "I want to say something," he said, voice shaking slightly. "I was 2 rows back. I heard everything. And I didn't speak up. I should have." Marcus looked at him. "I just want you to know," the man continued, "your dad is a hero. And so are you." A ripple of agreement passed through the cabin. Marcus didn't know what to do with that. His eyes filled again, but this time the tears felt different. They didn't burn. They warmed him. A flight supervisor appeared from the front, whispering urgently to the attendant. The attendant nodded repeatedly, her face stiff with fear. She avoided looking at Marcus and his father. The general leaned closer to his son. "You okay if I talk to them?" Marcus nodded. The general stood and walked forward, calm and measured. The supervisor listened, her expression tightening with every word. "She will be removed from duty upon landing," the supervisor said quietly, "and a formal report will be filed." "That is appropriate," the general replied. "But what matters now is my son." He returned to Marcus and sat again. "You didn't embarrass me," Marcus said suddenly. "Did I?" His father's eyes softened. "You honored me." Marcus bit his lip. "She said kids without fathers get into trouble." His father looked straight ahead. "People say things when they don't understand. You don't have to carry their ignorance." Marcus pulled out his notebook again. He opened to the drawing of the soldier with stars. "I drew you," he said. The general studied it. His voice thickened. "You made me taller than real life." Marcus smiled for the first time since boarding. As the plane continued, the mood shifted. A woman offered Marcus a bag of cookies. A man gave him a small toy airplane from his bag. Even the child 2 rows up turned around and waved. The boy who had wanted to be invisible was now seen by everyone. But not all eyes were kind. From the front of the cabin, the flight attendant watched him with a mixture of fear and resentment. Her pride had shattered in public. She sat rigidly in the jump seat, hands clenched in her lap. She had not expected consequences. She had not expected him. The general watched her briefly, then looked away. When the seatbelt sign lit up for descent, Marcus's stomach fluttered. "Dad," he whispered, "are you mad at her?" His father paused. "I'm disappointed. But anger doesn't teach. Truth does." The wheels hit the runway with a jolt. Passengers began to stand, gathering bags. The flight supervisor approached again. "General, would you and your son wait until the others deplane?" "Of course." People passed Marcus slowly, some touching his shoulder, some whispering encouragement. One elderly woman stopped and knelt. "You remind me of my grandson," she said. "He lost his father in service. Never let anyone make you feel small." Marcus nodded solemnly. Finally, the aisle cleared. The flight attendant stood nearby, eyes downcast. The supervisor spoke firmly. "You will come with me." The attendant looked at Marcus. For a moment, something like regret flickered across her face. "I'm sorry," she said again, quieter this time. Marcus didn't answer. His father stood. "Come on, son." They walked off the plane together. Outside the gate, Marcus's uncle waited, waving anxiously. "There he is," he called. Marcus ran into his arms. "I saw the news," his uncle whispered. "They told me what happened," Marcus blinked. "News?" Screens near the terminal showed a short clip recorded by a passenger. The moment when the general had said, "What did you just say to my son?" was already everywhere. People stopped and stared. The general sighed. "So it begins." They walked through the terminal surrounded by whispers. "That's him." "The general?" "That boy." Marcus felt dizzy. At his uncle's house that evening, Marcus sat at the table drawing again. This time, he drew a plane, his father, and himself standing tall. "Dad," he said on the phone later that night, "will I always have to prove you're real?" There was silence on the other end. "No," his father said. "But some people will need reminders." The next day, Marcus went to school. Everyone knew. Kids stared. Teachers looked awkward. During recess, a boy who had teased him before said, Your dad's famous." Marcus shrugged. "He's just my dad." But inside, something had changed. He didn't walk with his head down anymore. He walked like someone who knew he belonged. Across the city, the flight attendant sat in an office answering questions, HR, reports, consequences. She replayed the boy's face in her mind. She had assumed. She had judged. And she had been wrong. Days later, Marcus received a letter. It was from the airline. "We apologize for the treatment you received. You have shown courage and dignity." Inside was a small silver pin shaped like wings. Marcus pinned it to his backpack. He held it up to the mirror. "I look like a pilot," he said. His uncle smiled. "Or a general." Marcus thought about the words that had hurt him. Kids without fathers usually get into trouble. He crossed them out in his notebook and wrote new ones. "My dad stands with me." He closed the notebook and felt something settle inside him. Not fear, not shame, strength. And the memory of that moment, the cabin, the silence, the stars on his father's shoulders would follow him forever. Because sometimes the world shows you who it is, and sometimes it shows you who you are. The story did not end when Marcus walked into his classroom with a silver wing pin on, his backpack and his head held higher than before. In many ways. That was only the beginning. By the third day after the flight, the video had reached millions. News anchors spoke solemnly about dignity, respect, and the dangers of assumptions. Social media split into two worlds, one praising the general and his son, the other arguing over the flight attendant's actions, trying to justify what could not be justified. Marcus did not understand any of that. He only understood the way people looked at him now. At school, teachers suddenly spoke softer to him. Classmates who once ignored him now wanted to sit next to him. Even the boy who had laughed at his old shoes offered him half of his sandwich at lunch, but attention felt heavier than cruelty. During reading time, Marcus stared at the same sentence for 10 minutes without seeing it. "You okay?" His teacher, Mrs. Hill, whispered. He nodded. Though he wasn't sure. That afternoon, his uncle picked him up. "You were brave," his uncle said again as they walked to the car. Marcus kicked a pebble along the sidewalk. "I didn't do anything." "That's the point," his uncle replied. "You stayed who you are." At home, the phone kept ringing. Reporters, family members, old friends of his father. Marcus's father finally arrived that evening in full uniform. The house felt smaller with him inside, like the walls leaned in to listen. Marcus ran into his arms. "Dad." "Everyone knows." His father knelt. "Do you want them to?" Marcus thought, "I just want them to stop saying things." His father nodded slowly. "Then we teach them another way." The next morning, Marcus and his father went to a community center, where the airline had arranged a private meeting with staff representatives. The flight attendant was not there. Instead, a group of managers and trainers sat stiffly around a long table. "We deeply regret what happened," one of them said. "We will update our training procedures." The general looked at them calmly. "Training does not fix hearts. Listening does." They asked Marcus if he wanted to speak. Marcus hesitated. His father squeezed his shoulder. Marcus stood on his toes so his voice could reach the table. "She made me feel like I was nothing," he said. "I didn't do anything bad. I just didn't have my dad with me on the plane. And she thought that meant something about me." The room was silent. A woman wiped her eyes. "I don't want her to get hurt," Marcus added. "I just don't want anyone else to feel like that." When they left, the sun felt brighter. For the first time, Marcus felt like his words mattered. But not everyone learned from the moment. One night, Marcus overheard his uncle talking quietly on the phone. "They're blaming the general now," his uncle said. saying he humiliated her on purpose. Marcus's stomach twisted. Later, he asked, "Did you mean to make her feel bad?" His father shook his head. "I meant to make her understand, but she lost her job." His father sighed. "Consequences are not revenge. They are lessons." Marcus wasn't sure he understood that yet. The next week, Marcus's school invited his father to speak at an assembly. The gym filled with students, parents and teachers. Marcus sat in the front row, legs swinging nervously, when his father stepped onto the stage. The room went quiet. "I wear this uniform," the general began, "but I am here today as a father." He told them about Marcus's birth, about missing birthdays because of duty, about promising his son that no matter where he served, he would always stand for him. "I did not walk onto that plane to prove power," he said. "I walked in to protect a child's dignity." Students listened differently now. Not like to a soldier, like to a parent. After the speech, a girl raised her hand. "My dad isn't around," she said softly. "Does that make me bad?" The general stepped closer to the edge of the stage. "No," he said. "It makes you human." The girl smiled through tears. Marcus felt something warm in his chest. But far away, in a small apartment, the flight attendant sat alone. Her phone buzzed with messages. She could not read without flinching. She had been transferred to desk duty. Her uniform hung untouched in the closet. Every night, she replayed the boy's eyes. Not angry. Confused. That was what haunted her most. One afternoon, she received a letter. It was handwritten. Marcus's name was on the envelope. Her hands trembled as she opened it. It said, "I don't hate you. I just want you to know my dad is real. And I'm real too. I hope you don't say that to another kid." She stared at the words for a long time. She cried for the first time since the incident. The next morning, she asked to speak with the airline's counselor across town. Marcus returned to his normal life slowly. Homework, cartoons, drawing soldiers with stars. But now, whenever someone made a joke about his dad not being around, Marcus spoke up. "My dad is a general," he said simply, and even when people didn't believe him, he believed himself. One afternoon, a boy on the bus said, "You think you're special now?" Marcus shook his head. "No, I think everyone is." The boy didn't reply. At night, Marcus dreamed of airplanes and uniforms and a voice that said, "What did you just say to my son?" He dreamed of standing tall. Months passed. The story faded from headlines, but it did not fade from hearts. The airline changed its training. The school started discussions about respect. Parents talked to their children differently. And Marcus grew. One day, he stood in front of the mirror and put on a small jacket his uncle had bought him. "I look like Dad," he said. His uncle smiled. "You look like you," Marcus thought. About the flight again. Not with fear, with understanding. He learned that silence could hurt, and voices could heal. He learned that assumptions could break someone, and truth could rebuild them. He learned that dignity did not come from uniforms or ranks. It came from standing up when it mattered. And somewhere inside him, a quiet promise formed. If I see someone being treated like I was, I will stand up too. Because once, when the world tried to shrink him, his father made him bigger. And now, he would do the same for others. The day Marcus returned to the airport, everything felt different. Not louder, not brighter. Just heavier. His uncle held his hand as they stepped through the sliding glass doors. The smell of coffee and fuel mixed in the air. People hurried past them with suitcases, unaware that this place had changed Marcus's life forever. He had not wanted to come back at first. Airplanes now lived in his dreams. Not always good ones, but his father had knelt in front of him that morning and said, "Sometimes Courage means walking back into the place that hurt you. So here he was. They were not boarding a flight. They were meeting with airline officials, trainers, and a group of employees who wanted to hear Marcus's story directly. When they entered the conference room, dozens of eyes turned toward him, some curious, some ashamed, some unsure. Marcus felt small again. His father placed a hand on his back. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to." Marcus swallowed. "I want to." He stepped forward. "I didn't know my dad was on the plane," Marcus began. "I thought I was just alone." The room was silent. When she said I had no father, I thought maybe she was right. Maybe that's how people saw me. A woman in a navy uniform covered her mouth. Marcus continued, voice trembling. "But then my dad stood up, and I realized people can be wrong about you." He looked around the room. "I don't want anyone else to feel like they don't matter because someone makes a guess about them." No one clapped. They didn't need to. Many of them were crying. After the meeting, one of the trainers approached Marcus. "You changed how we teach now," she said softly. "We start with your story." Marcus blinked. "Really?" "Yes, because rules don't change hearts. Stories do." That night, Marcus sat on his bed, staring at the silver wing pin his father had given him. He turned it over in his fingers. "Dad?" he asked quietly. "Yes, son. Why did she think that about me?" His father sat beside him. "Because fear makes people see what they expect, not what is real." Marcus frowned. "Will people always do that?" His father paused. "Some will, but some will learn." Marcus nodded slowly. Weeks passed. The school invited Marcus to join a student leadership group. Not because he was famous, because he was brave. He didn't feel brave. He felt scared every time he spoke, but he spoke anyway. One afternoon, a new boy joined his class. He wore worn shoes and kept his head down. When another kid whispered, "He looks like trouble," Marcus stood up. "He's just new," Marcus said. "That doesn't mean anything." The room went quiet. The new boy looked up. Something shifted. Later, the boy whispered, "Thanks." Marcus understood then. This was how it started. Not with generals, not with uniforms, with small moments. Meanwhile, the flight attendant began her own journey. She attended counseling, training, community programs. She volunteered at a youth center. Every time she saw a child sitting alone, she remembered Marcus. Not his words, his eyes. One day, she stood in front of a mirror in her apartment and practiced. "I'm sorry," she said aloud. Again, and again, until the words no longer sounded like excuses. Months later, a letter arrived at Marcus's home. It was from her. "I was wrong," the letter said. "I judged you without knowing you. You showed me something about myself I did not want to see. Thank you for being braver than I was." Marcus read it twice, then once more. He didn't know what to feel. Anger, confusion. He showed it to his father. "What should I do?" Marcus asked. His father said gently, "Do what makes your heart lighter." Marcus wrote back, "I hope you don't hurt kids with words anymore. I hope you help them instead." That night, Marcus slept peacefully. The world outside continued arguing, debating, shouting, but inside one small house, something healed. A year later, Marcus stood on a stage at a youth conference. Not because he was the general's son, because he was Marcus. He looked out at rows of children and parents. "My dad wears stars on his shoulders," Marcus said. "But I learned something more important." He paused. Power isn't yelling. Power is protecting someone when they feel small. Applause filled the room. In the back row, his father stood with tears in his eyes. After the event, a little girl tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "My dad isn't here," she whispered. But I'm not bad, right? Marcus smiled. No, you're strong. She hugged him. That night, Marcus asked his father, "Do you think the plane needed to happen?" His father thought for a long time. "I wish it didn't," he said. But sometimes pain teaches the world lessons kindness didn't. Marcus stared at the ceiling. "I don't want to be known for that day," he said. His father smiled. "You won't be. You'll be known for what you did after." Years later, when Marcus was older, he would remember that flight not as the moment he was hurt, but as the moment he learned who he could be. A boy who stood up, a boy who spoke, a boy who refused to be defined by someone else's ignorance. And somewhere in the sky, airplanes kept flying. But now, when Marcus saw one, he didn't feel small, he felt tall, because once, a flight attendant mocked him for having no father. And the world went silent. When a 4-star general stood up for his son, and the boy learned that dignity is louder than prejudice, and courage can change everything.